What are civic virtues? Civic virtues are positive, stable character traits that enable citizens to play a part in the public lives of their political communities. Civic virtues are vital for individual and societal flourishing. Like all virtues, civic virtues are made up of a variety of components. These include reason, emotion, action, and reflection. But what precisely civic virtues are remains contested. Are civic virtues a virtue in their own right, or are civic virtues better understood as either a subset of moral virtues or moral and intellectual virtues played out in the public domain? Historically, civic virtues, such as civility, tolerance, and service, have been seen as a core part of someone's character, alongside moral virtues, intellectual virtues, and performance virtues. In seeking to understand civic virtues, we must also consider the role that phronesis, or the meta-virtue of practical wisdom, plays in ensuring that our civic character is enacted in the right way, at the right time, and for the right reason. Civic virtues lie at the heart of the public domain. They're vital for the active, informed, and responsible engagement of citizens in a variety of community, political, and civil organisations. Whether it's community groups, voluntary groups, sports and social clubs, religious affiliations, or other organisations, civic virtues are at the heart of a flourishing and healthy democracy. Today we live at a time in which widespread concerns have been raised about various aspects of democratic culture. A trend towards incivility in public discourse, increasing polarisation, and the persistent lack of inclusion and justice for various groups in society. As digital and social media have expanded, serious concerns have also been raised about the impact of such media platforms on the health of democratic lives. Clearly, the current political context of many democratic societies holds significant challenges for citizens, for citizenship, and for civic character. Clearly, the current context of democratic societies raises many challenges for the cultivation and formation of civic virtues. And yet, that cultivation is absolutely essential. Moreover, the cultivation of civic virtue in wider society and through education, schooling, and higher education has to be intentional if it is to be meaningful. A key part of the educational process is the development and use of a vocabulary of civic virtues. It's through this vocabulary that students, whether at school, colleges, or at university, can make connections to others, connection to their communities, and connection between civic virtues and other types of virtues, whether they be moral virtues, intellectual virtues, or performance virtues. And yet we know educationally there's no consistent or common approach to the cultivation of civic virtue. And often, education for civic virtue is left unintentional or implicit in education and processes and systems. And education in civic virtue is too important to be left to chance. And we should remember that schools, teachers, colleges, and youth organisations cannot undertake this work alone, but must be supported in their endeavour by government policy, by parents, by families, and by the wider community more generally. What challenges exist in the formation of civic character? First and foremost, it's vital that education for civic virtue, whether in wider public life or in education, schooling, and universities, does not take a remedial approach, but rather is aspirational. Cultivating civic virtue is not about apportioning blame or redirecting responsibility, but is about supporting young people to become the active, engaged, critical citizens that they wish to be and that they can be. There are other challenges to cultivating civic virtues. The language of civic virtues may be met with some hesitancy. It's important that when we talk about civic virtues, we talk about them in an open and inclusive way, rather than a version of civic virtues that's static or paternalistic. Perhaps most pressingly, how can we develop a conception of civic virtues that is open and inclusive and that takes into account modern, contemporary democratic societies? There are other philosophical and educational questions around civic virtue, and we need more research that investigates the cultivation of civic virtue and their expression in and through the educational system. While there are many challenges to the cultivation and expression of civic virtues in contemporary democratic life, including within education systems, civic virtues offer hope. Through collaboration with others and the development of a mutual sense of goodwill, civic virtues can thrive. Without civic virtues, democratic life is unstable and democratic societies cannot flourish. In fact, civic virtues are the very bedrock of flourishing, active, engaged and inclusive political communities.